Welcome to the Peace of Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Larson, and I am actually doing something a little bit differently today. Instead of having two men come on and discuss a certain topic, we're actually going to be interviewing my mother. And so, welcome to the pod, Mom. I'm happy to have you. She's a little nervous about this. It was a little bit of dragging feet to get her here, but she's here. And the reason I would like to share a little bit of my mom's story with you, the audience, is because, truth be told, I don't even know a lot of it because she hasn't shared a lot of things, but also because this is a woman who grew up in small town Nebraska, had her first child at 18, put herself through college, ended up teaching chemistry for 40 plus years, and has really been, much to her own discredit, a tale of perseverance and resilience that I would love to be shared with other people, and honestly, just to hear for myself. So this is a diversion, I would say, from my other content with interviewing the men, but something that I thought would be very enjoyable. And I've actually had a number of people request her guest appearance on the pod as well. So we are getting the fans' first look at Julie Larson. And so how I'd love to start is having you just tell us a little bit about your childhood and your parents, what they did, and what it was like growing up as the youngest sister of two older brothers on a farm. Older brothers.
Yes, I was the youngest of three kids, and Mom and Dad met in World War II. And you heard the story that they met at one of Lady Bird Johnson's teas in Austin, Texas, that she had for the eligible young men in town who were officers and military guys and the young women of Austin. And they saw each other at this, and it was all she wrote after that. They fell for each other, and he brought her back to Nebraska.
A quick aside, when Grandpa Don saw Grandma Norma sitting in the car, what was he most attracted to?
Her knees.
Her chubby knees. Chubby knees.
Not skinny, bony knees. And, whatever, Dad. Okay, but that's what
And now we have a family of chubby knees. Thanks
we have a whole family of chubby knees. Thank you,
and thunder
Norma
thighs. Yes, indeed. So that was just an important thing to note.
Didn't know if you really wanted me to bring that up or not, but yeah.
Also, what was his role in the military?
He was an Army Air Corps, because there wasn't such a thing as Air Force, an Army Air Corps pilot. And he flew 8,000 hours in World War II, delivering mostly military officers, general. He did fly Patton and supplies to people all over Europe and Africa and that sort of thing.
And as a pilot, I think he had a few close calls during that time as well.
Yes, he did. We have pictures of him with his tail shot up and him as he brought it into France and crash landed the thing. But everyone was okay and it was all right. And and David, his son, my brother, took him back there so he could see the spot where he landed that plane.
And survived, funny enough.
And survived it.
And I know my two older sisters would actually sometimes go out flying with
Dad,
my grandfather, but Alex and I never really did that. But
no, he was kind of too old to do some of that stuff by the time you and Al got around there. Yeah.
So that being said, then you like you said, you had two older brothers, Mark and Dave, and then you came along.
Yes. And so Dad farmed. He brought Mom back from Kentucky. She was from Kentucky. And he brought her back to Nebraska. And they farmed. And Mark and Dave would help Dad farm.
In the loosest definition of help, because they were some wildlings, were they not?
Well, they were 11, 12 years old driving farm vehicles, which is what kids did back then, and into the, farmyard from the road. And yeah, it's a wonder that we all lived through that. And we would go out and we would hoe weeds out of the soybean field. And I couldn't take the heat. And I was 7 years younger than my oldest brother, 5 years younger than David. And so, if they were 12 or 13 out there, I was significantly younger.
Yeah, 6.
And they would find me passed out in the soybean row. And so, luckily, thank you, Mom, she said, I don't think it's so good for Julie to be out here roguing soybeans. So I went in, and at about 8, 9 years old, I cooked lunch for everyone. Mom showed me kind of how, and went on from there. And we had fried steak, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans every day.
Every day.
Every single day, because, you butchered beef, and that's what you had. So, yes, I cooked fried steak, mashed potatoes, gravy every day.
Well, and I know that you've shared a couple stories about near-death experiences that your brothers put you through, but is there any one that is particularly memorable to share?
Well, it was all, hey, sis, come on out and let's do this. Okay. And so, they'd take me out to the broken wood pile. We'd climb up into it, except there were nails, that were the
dream.
And luckily, I did not fall on one, but David fell, and it went right through his knee, down. So we didn't pull it out. So we just walked back to the farm with this board hanging from his knee where the nail was stuck in. Underneath, and went, Mom, see what happened here? What are you doing?
We were just playing, Mom.
Yes, yes. And then they wanted to swing me in the shed, and they had a rope strung across the shed, and they had 2 big bicycle tires on it. And they put my legs on one and my neck on the other, and just pushed me back and forth. Well, they pushed so hard my head fell out, and boom, came down on the concrete floor of the shed.
I almost thought you said that you were going to say that your head came off, which is nearly the same as about what happened.
It just hit that boy. I remember hitting that concrete floor. And once again, Mark and Dave got into a lot of trouble taking me out in places where I shouldn't be. But, I was like a live doll to them, where they could just do whatever, let's see what happened when Sissy does this, and we'll do. And then he pulled me on the sled, and I went flying off. And
I actually say that it's pretty miraculous that any men make it to college, and I feel like that's especially true for this time in an era when, it was before we had any sort of social media or electronics, and kids were literally outside playing themselves to death. And into death.
Yes, especially on a farm.
Yes.
Where you had all kinds of tools and nails and saws and hammers.
Yes.
And, and that didn't count the cattle out in the pen. And says, let's go out and see the cattle. Okay.
Going to be trampled to death.
Yeah, chasing after you. Luckily, we could run fast. Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a child?
Interestingly enough, lonely. I was so much younger than my brothers. They were just like this, which is great.
Yeah.
And they'd go out and do things. And we lived a quarter mile from another family, but they had little kids that they didn't have till I was, 11 or 12. And growing up, there were just no girls around. Mm-hmm. And I went to a country school where there were 4 people in my class, and the other girl was very much a tomboy. And so she and I we weren't really necessarily friends. And, we were miles away from everyone. And so you've heard the story.
I know, you have to tell.
I got really good at going out because, I was just by myself all day. So I'd get on my bike, and my grandparents lived a mile away, and I could ride up to see them, which I did frequently. But I got really good at sitting out in the field and just watching for critters. And I could sit still enough that I'd wait until the mice came along, and I could grab them by the tail and
what a time to be alive. You were making friends with the animals.
I was. And I'd take the mice and I'd
That's a lonely youth,
in a big
Jules.
jar and take them back and show Mom.
Right.
And, Mom didn't seem all that happy
She
about
wasn't thrilled with the mice.
But then at 8 years old, she knew I had to find some friends and find something to do. So she got me in a 4-H club.
Oh, okay.
And
so that's where that started.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in case anyone hasn't heard of 4-H, because a lot of people are not from the Midwest, can you tell them what 4-H is?
It's just an organization that lets you learn how to do different skills that at that point in time, like my specialty was then sewing.
Yeah.
And we had a fabulous assistant leader, and she taught us how to make our clothes. And
the 4-H is really a combination of agriculture and then kind of like life
and home skills
or domestic skills,
right,
I would say.
Right. So sewing, and then cooking and
baking.
then decoration of the house and decor.
Yeah.
And
Baking,
making things for the
pickling,
house. Right.
vegetables
Yes.
and stuff and
right.
fruits.
All that
probably.
kind of thing. And then there was also an ag end of it with animals. So I showed cattle, which means you found a calf and you fed it a certain diet to fatten it up, and you tamed it and you went out and led it around, with a rope and a halter on it. And then you showed that calf at the county fair, and they judged it on the quality of meat that it would produce. And so I did that with my brothers. You could do it with horses, you could do it with hogs, you could do it with sheep, you could do it with rabbits, you could do it with cats and dogs.
Livestock and then small animals.
Right.
And so I feel like, growing up with the 2 older brothers and them being very close but kind of doing their own thing, do you feel like that is part of what contributed to just making you so independent? Because I feel like you're just incredibly independent.
It probably did to some extent, but to be honest, I credit most of that just to my mother.
Yeah.
You knew Norma Jean. I mean, she was
incredibly independent.
a force. I mean, she was. She was transplanted, here, or not here, but I mean in the Midwest, from Kentucky, which was such a change of culture.
Yeah.
And she was not accepted well at all by the social structure of the farm wives.
Well, I can say...
And so she just, said, to heck with that, we'll do our thing, we'll do fine. And she very much instilled in me an attitude of, you go ahead and try to do what you can do, and, you can do it.
And do you.
Yes, do you, and do your best, and you'll be fine. And she never really said that.
Yeah.
But it was just the way she was.
It's funny because in conversations I've had with other friends and people I've met over time, sometimes they'll ask kind of what was the messaging from my parents to us. And I'm like, honestly, y'all didn't really say anything all that specific.
No.
You really didn't say, be yourself and be unique and embrace yourselves and you're beautiful. You didn't say that.
No.
I mean, you modeled it, certainly. but it wasn't a household of verbal messaging, I would say.
It was living it out. And what we tried to do was make opportunities available to all of you that you could pursue to go do what you needed and wanted to do.
And definitely encourage us to do all the things. But there really was no overt, I would say, messaging with that.
No.
But I will say, as I've gotten older and I can understand and look back and appreciate, I can see how, Grandma Norma's sense of herself passing down to you. You're incredibly sure of yourself or secure in yourself.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
Yeah, in all the settings I've ever seen you in. And that's not to say that you never have a little nerves or anxiety or, could feel
like
out
today?
of place. Yeah, exactly, like today. Or could feel out of place. But I think that as a daughter, one of the greatest things a mom can be is secure in themselves and see that that's just the way of life,
Yeah.
I think that that's something that you've always been, just very.
Well, and, I just have to say, Mother, I always got the impression from her that I could do whatever I felt was best for me, and I'd be okay.
Yeah.
And she just always instilled that there was not ever any fear.
Self-doubt or just self-doubt created.
No, not at all.
And I'll touch back on that in a little bit, but I think that it's just very important that you tell the Anaconda story real quick about the boy at the country school that you got in trouble with.
Oh, geez. Well, you know how it is in elementary school.
Country school
is also a little rougher.
With just a handful of farm kids.
And yes, and not a lot of supervision, as they say. So out on the playground, it could get a little rough. And, with two older brothers, I knew how to physically defend myself.
Important skills.
Yes, important skills for a girl, I think, in that situation. And there was an obnoxious little boy in my grade who was in my face and doing things. And I just said to him, and I won't use his name, buddy, you see that hole right there? If you don't leave me alone, there's an anaconda that's 15 feet long. It's going to come out of that hole, and he's going to wrap around you, and he's going to kill you. And he believed me.
I'm sure.
And he left me alone.
And how did you know what an anaconda was at that point?
We must have, you know how we watch TV in our family.
Yeah.
I mean, we love it. So I had seen it on television. Somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Do you know?
Yes. What was that Sunday show with Merlin?
And this would have been about 1960.
Yes, 60-ish.
Or 2.
Right.
1962.
Yes, there was a show on Sunday afternoons where they went out in Africa and Asia and went and saw all these animals and we loved that show.
And you said that anaconda is going to come for you in Nebraska, okay?
If you don't come leave me alone, buddy.
This hole.
And I believe there was a black guy involved, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
What does that mean?
I hit him.
Oh, a black eye.
A black eye.
Oh,
Yeah.
Look at you, Jules.
I know.
Man, feisty.
Yeah.
Well, this is all adding up.
You have to stand up for yourself.
You got to stand up for yourself.
Little poops are going to roll right over you.
Well, and that's what's funny too is, having kids. Well, again, I can speak for Alex and I. We were not really ever. You never really said explicitly that we needed to stand up for ourselves, but we were also not really ever in situations that were that would lend itself to that.
Plus, we didn't need to. I mean, we watched you kids. And, I was fortunate in that I taught at the high school where all 4 of my children went. And that was priceless because I could see them interact. I could see how they were with friends, with people who did like them, people who didn't like them. And if we would have felt it was necessary with any of the four of you, we would have sat you down and said something and done something. But the thing was,
we weren't really prepped for that life because we weren't really part of that life.
Well, and you didn't need it, you know, because both you and Alex and Stacy, and Stace had some issues here and there, but really all four of you learned how to stand up for yourselves and defend yourselves. And
fun fact, now I know that my mom's punched someone and I never have. So that's really too bad.
I enjoyed it. I mean, you know, what can I say? It just is one of those things.
One of those things. Okay, well, we're going to fast forward to you had my oldest sister at 18, correct?
I did.
And how did that come about? Jules? Well, not really.
Do you not know how that comes? But, you know, honey, I'm not prepared to go into that. I mean, if you haven't.
You got married and had my sister. What was that like at the time, which again would have been early 70s?
Yes.
Yeah, early 70s in small town Nebraska.
Right. Yeah. Well, the hardest part of that was that my mom and dad were disappointed, you know, because I got pregnant and had to get married. And that's what you did at that point in time. And, you know, I was senior class president and
a national merit scholar.
National merit finalist. Yeah. So, you know, it's not something you're going to keep a secret. But it was my own doing. It was my own. And I'm not going to call it a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
When you see the outcome, which is Lizzie Beth.
Yeah.
And Stacy after that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, okay, I could go back and say, wow, that was just a huge mistake and I never should have done, no, because I have, and, you know, if I wouldn't have had Liz and wouldn't have had Stacy, who else would I have not had?
Yeah.
Jonah Sam. And, you know, so lots of absolutely wonderful things came out of something that really wasn't at that point in time the smartest thing to do.
Yeah.
But that ship sailed, and, you know, you make a choice to make the best of it and live with it, and life goes on. Mom and Dad were hurt, you know, and that was actually the worst part of that, because I know they wanted to see me go on to college and get these scholarships and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, that didn't happen because Liz was born in November. And so I couldn't go to college. Immediately.
Yeah.
And so I laid out a year with her and the baby. And then, you know, you can see God's hand in this guiding things here and there, because we happened to move into a house that's next to the college. Just happened to. Mm-hmm. And Mom and Dad say to me a year later, you know, sis, if you want to take a college class or two, we can help you pay for it. And that was when tuition was $15 an hour.
Wow.
Yes. And I remember thinking, you know, yeah, that'd be kind of fun. And
I have never known that college wasn't still an automatic for you. I never knew that there was this time that passed.
You didn't know what was an automatic because you didn't know.
Well, yeah.
You know.
No, but we
had no money.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wasn't working because we had this baby.
Yeah.
And you didn't, I didn't. And it was safer for me if I didn't think about it.
Sure.
Because you don't want to sit there and dwell on it and go, well, geez, you know, gosh, I should be there with. You can't do that.
Well, I would like to take this moment just to point out that in general, I feel like another great thing about you that I have seen over the course and really paid more attention to in my adulthood is that you really don't regret things. Like, you don't have regrets. You don't sit around and lament really anything over the course of any time that I've known you. And so I have always known you to be a very decisive person. And I feel like even if something happens that, wasn't necessarily your plan, or, maybe the optimal route, you still move forward with decision, and you're not spending it or wasting it wishing.
Yeah.
You're not that person.
Well, well, you know me, I'm kind of practical.
Very practical, very no nonsense.
Yeah.
That's this
So,
woman.
the thing is, I see no advantage in doing that.
Yeah.
It's just, and
maybe a little less emotional. If
Well,
anyone
that's
knows
what
me,
I was going
if
to
anyone
say.
knows me, Kirsten is full of emotions, and they are teeming.
Yeah.
24/7. They are just at the brim.
Well, you and Stace.
All the time.
You and Stace are the emotional,
which is definitely and
loving.
more my father for sure.
Yes.
But my mom has always been less emotional, extremely practical, extremely no nonsense, get stuff done, efficient,
Yeah.
go getter.
Yeah. And luckily, of course, I can get emotional, but
Yeah.
I'm not emotional enough that I will dwell on those kinds of things that happen.
Or see use in that.
Well, that's just it, because there's no use, and it pulls you out of the present. And good grief, I had 4 kids and worked full time, and I had a lot of irons in the fire, and really there wasn't any time to sit around and feel sorry for myself.